Hey, what's up, man? I would say, how are you doing? But I definitely know how you are doing. And it's unwell. So I'll just be like, I'll try to be as concise as possible. But it's gonna be a problem. Um, I think everybody gets to his point, but everyone seemingly acts differently. And I think the success stories you see all act in a typical way, and I think it's by design. But everyone gets to a point, right? Everyone gets to a point where you know who you are, and then there's a gap between who you either want to be or who people think you are. And the only gap between it is the belief, right? And at least for yourself, it's the belief of who you can be, you becoming, and then the gap between who you are and who people think you are is external proof for others. They have to believe certain things that you've proven to them in order to, like, not just run with whatever preconceived notions that they may have of you or of someone who would be in your situation. Because it may not even be you, but it's like if I was in that situation, or they've seen others in a similar situation, and so they label certain identities onto you or to, people who are similar to those situations as you. So essentially, we do a lot of generalizations to simplify our understanding of others and reality of others when it's a lot more complex to that. But we try to boil it down to the simplest like thing to just make it a little easier for ourselves. And I think in that we really lose, the depth and the complexity of like what it is actually meaning to be a person and to experience and see another person. You don't actually see the person. You see all this like tropes and cliches, and like even with that, it's like most of that shit isn't real. It's just shit that sounds nice. So, and if it doesn't even sound nice, nice in a way where it's like it's succinct. It's just like you could say it's not that deep when it's just like that. That just serves you to not think as deep. So to be more concrete, for myself, right? I've been told a lot of shit about myself. Just even me talking about this can just be like, what the fuck is this nigga talking about, bro? What do you think? Nigga, you don't think we understand life, bro? Nigga, we understand it, bro. We understand all that shit deep, but what the fuck does that, how does that make me get richer? How does that make me live better? How does that make me feel better, my nigga? Right? So it's not that I don't understand, my nigga. It's just that I don't care, my nigga. Cause nigga, I can't care about everything, bro. If I did, I wouldn't be able to do anything. And to that, I say, well, like I get you, but like, damn, my nigga, that seems like a very fucked up way to live, my nigga. It seemed like what it is and what it means is that anything that doesn't benefit you or benefit your understanding of the world around you in the simplest terms and ways as possible is just not important. And that, I just think that couldn't be further from the truth. And I think that rhetoric usually pushes niggas to do and be extremists in some kind of way. And really not even think about some of the shit that they really have strong feelings and belief towards, because nigga, learning all the facts and details would be way too much trouble and work to do. And even if you can't learn every fact in detail, you can at least have some opinion and have that fluctuate due to more, things being shown to you, whether it's so you learn more over time and you think about more. But if you won't even get to the point where you will bother to learn more, then none of that shit's gonna matter. It's just gonna be what it is until it's not. And it's never not. It just always will be. Because anything that it could be would require any sort of processing power that could deter from you being what you want it to be or you thought it was already. And God forbid anyone change up whatever notion that you had of yourself or the world around you that was false, right? It's called false beliefs sometimes. And people can really cling to these false beliefs because they serve them in a way. And I don't want to shatter that just for the sake of like a conversation, because sometimes that just doesn't go far enough, right? Most of the time it will, if it's an actual, like a real conversation and not just like niggas just talking just to like, hey, how's your day, Jim? Oh, good. The wife, like, you know what I mean? Niggas talk like that all the time. That's not like, that's just to be social. Like, for me though, going back to what I was saying, I've been told a lot of shit. Even talking about this, like I've been told, I could be arrogant, I could sound condescending, I could sound all types of shit. But I've also been told I'm like super kind, I'm super sweet, I'm compassionate, that I see people for who they are. And these things are very conflicting in themselves, because an arrogant person wouldn't give a fuck about random strangers, or, wouldn't be compassionate and caring about others, and wouldn't offer all these perspectives and spend all this, time and energy, with people to try to help them. So it's just like, you know, sometimes two things can be true at once, but usually in an instance of a person, it's like an amalgamation of sorts, right? And people see what they want, right? If you look at, I think one of the greatest things you can do to kind of just like make it simple is like, if you're ever took in like an art class or a class on like sketching, like whatever, and you have a sketch pad, have like a bunch of people in a circle and have like a center object, and then have like a light cast a shadow on it, and have each of the people in the circle draw the item that's in the center, or the object, from their perspective, because the shadow will look a little different, the lighting will look a little different for each one of those things, but it'll be the same exact object with the same lighting, but everyone who has a different perspective at that moment will take what they take from it. And so to unify that perspective would be ideal, but then you would have to like stack everyone on top of each other, or have everyone just rotate in a single chair, which is time consuming and, just not as full of a picture, right? The full picture is usually the whole thing, but the whole thing isn't necessarily the picture, right? It's just a fuller picture, just a picture with full perspectives. So I admire, having multiple perspectives and like being, able to look at things differently. But most things, as far as what, what a singular unit or entity as a person would want to do, all that other shit really doesn't help, right? All this shit complicates it. Let me get A to B, right? Let me just sit from my perspective, right? The person who's sitting in chair 1 in this circle, hypothetically, doesn't need to know what chair number 7 is like what they see to draw their perspective of the object from chair 1. And in fact, having that may make the picture look really weird, because they're not getting 1 through 6, right? They're just saying 1 and 7, and they might see 4 too, right? If they see that, then maybe they get those things, but it's like you're not seeing everything from that perspective. If you get drawing from perspectives, then you understand that. The problem is, when you think about it that way, it's objective based, right? It's just, I'm drawing this. But then the why are you drawing this, and also what are you drawing, plays a factor into it. Which is why I think most arts come with like a description, at least art pieces, paintings, and things of that nature. They'll come with like a little brief description, or like the painter will, just some sort of credits. Sometimes it's just abstract and all open to interpretation. And at that point, then they want that kind of chair perspective to go. But art can have many reasons and many designs. And this isn't just for art. This is just for life in itself. But oftentimes, life imitates art and vice versa, right? Art imitates life in a lot of ways. Mainly, the thing is that when you see things from that one perspective, it definitely helps you achieve things from that singular perspective. And so if this singular perspective is what is best for me, what is coolest for me, what do I see only, that is a large, in part, a lot of the reason, like, at least on, we're talking about like Western civilization, individualism is like high and rampant as far as what people think. And it's also why a bunch of people become like narcissistic and all this other shit, right? Again, not to diagnose niggas, but this is just the way that it goes. If you only think from your perspective, then all you do is think from your perspective, and it doesn't matter what other niggas say, think, or feel. So my problem with this, talking about myself again, using that example, is that, my nigga, like, if people seen all these other things about me, in me, part of me does take the idea, take in the idea, I should say, that I should reflect on these things that they're saying about me, at least to understand where they're coming from. Because it may not be true, and most of the time it's fucking not. Because I know myself well enough to not just like embody those things. But they see it for a reason. So, okay, let me try to think about that. Why do they see that? Why do they even think that? You know? Because maybe that'll help me improve myself. It can even be to that extent, right? So singular focus, and it usually isn't for me, but for someone else, that could be like, no, why do they think I'm this? Oh, okay, I could and counterbalance that. A lot of people who want something to prove will do that. Oh, you don't think I could do this? Fine, I'll do this then. Oh, you don't think I'm like that? Fine, I'll show you then. And in that way, they get the approval of others because they're constantly chasing validation in that way. But when you're not, you really run into a big problem. And you do in the other ways too, but just when you're not, the problem is that you become like I said, you become arrogant, you become that, or at least you become perceived as that. Because most people, whether they want to say it or not, want you to want to they want you to want to like they want you to want them to like you. Right? They want you to be like, why isn't he trying to appeal to me? Why doesn't he think I'm this and that? Why don't they think I'm great? Like they want you to behave in a certain way that's cohesive to them. They want you to be palatable to them. They don't really want you to rock the boat, right? They don't want you to do that because then the shit gets shaky and they're like, whoa, that didn't align with what I was thinking or what I thought of you or this situation or XYZ. So it's really hard to do that with people who are very committed to being a certain way because it serves them. And doing so doesn't even mean that you're trying to like change them or their perspective or anything like that. You are just so yourself and you are so honest with self that anything that they see as different conflicts. And so some point someone they want you to conform, right? They just all want you to conform. And if they've conformed to the larger group or society or whatever kind of cluster of people or things at hand, then at any point when you are different from that because you are, secure in self, you become, like a target of scrutiny. And it's just like you stand out. Just case in point, you stand out. And I mean, not all attention is good attention. So I think it's more so bad attention. I think the attention is bad because what they're gonna see is like this Japanese like phrase where it's like the nail that sticks out the furthest gets hammered down first or some shit like that. It's a rough translation, but mainly what it is that nigga, you start standing out like that, they gonna try to this nigga the problem. Right? But the people who are acting, and that's a very important word, acting, think theatrical, they kind of skirt off with it because they're acting in ways that are typically seen as like normal or widely accepted by the, just by the culture or by thought process. So that's the problem, though. Most of those people do not align with themselves. And you know what's crazy? We live in a culture that says we, admire authenticity and we admire, people being true and honest with themselves. But as soon as they are, we're sometimes, put off by that if it doesn't kind of fit in ways that we think being yourself should be, right? If a person is themselves, but what they are is just a little bit like cringy, then we're like, ugh, this shit's cringy. We don't like be like, wow, they're so brave. We're like, wow, that nigga's embarrassing, or that girl's embarrassing, or things like that. And it's crazy to think because we like to preach all of this shit, but we like to preach it in a way, again, that aligns with these beliefs. So what we really mean is, nigga, be yourself as long as it makes me comfortable or as long as it looks like what I think being yourself looks like. If I don't believe it, then I don't think you're being yourself. In fact, I might think that you're lying to yourself. Or if you're trying to be like other people, but you are yourself, and that conflicts with it, and so you don't know what or who to be because you have to be in with people, then you have this internal conflict. And now you're trying to do the same thing, that again, that external proof or evidence to people that I'm this and I'm this and I'm that and the third, when you know for the most part that you're not. So that's why fake it till you make it is a thing, because at some point, if these things that you're embodying aren't yourself, you do it enough, you might just be really good at imitating it. Or, you know, even worse, they might become who you are. And then who you are is no longer who it was. It's just who they should be. This can be as far as like, you know, like male and female gender dynamics and norms, right? Where like a woman might think, oh, I need to be a stay-at-home mother, when it's like, nah, bro, you might just need to be a boss bitch. Or like a nigga might think, oh, I need to be a provider, and it's like, nigga, you might just need to be like a house husband type shit. Where, you know, even if we see that in and about people, we don't really think that that's the norm, because and someone could be perfect at that position, right? There could be a great father who's a nurturer, but if he ain't out making a bag, it's like, what this nigga doing, bro? This nigga, his girl, the breadwinner, nigga, you know what I mean? Like, we could look at them crazy. Or even the opposite, right? We see that woman, she's like, damn. And this is even more so true. So, you know, I definitely give women some, you know, leeway here, because a lot of niggas on the internet are gonna sound crazy, and I know even talking about it sounds crazy too, because once you have these sort of opinions online, they get misconstrued, and this is the entire point of what I'm talking about. But, you know, a woman might need to be the boss lady, she might need to be the huncho, but everyone's like, man, fuck her woman opinions, go back, or like, oh, she's a bitch, right? And that would be the worst, right? That's the yo, he's arrogant, oh, he's an asshole, oh, she's a bitch type shit, right? And that might be what it is, my nigga, because of what people see, because you being in a position that they don't think that you should be in based on certain criteria, like things that you cannot change about yourself, they'll be upset. We don't think a leader should be this, so we say, okay, if someone is a leader and they're this, then they can't be. Or we don't think, you know what I mean, whatever it might be. And it's really arrogant of us to think that we can prescribe traits to people when we don't even know them deep enough to say anything beyond they look and act certain ways that aren't regular to me. It's crazy. It's really crazy, but it's if it's a cultural crazy, then it becomes the norm, right? The more everything or everyone moves and thinks a certain way, the more like it becomes more normal. It's not really normal, but it's just normalized, right? And that's exactly why, if you see in the media, there's a bunch of conservatives upset with like trans and queer and other shit, like, you know what I mean, just LGBTQ T plus A X Y Z theta, all that shit. No disrespect, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they see representation from that side and think this is what's going to be normalized. And so since it's becoming normalized, more people will become the sort. They understand this, and they weaponize it to specifically move in ways that things have been historically, but not historically everywhere. Historically in certain areas and to benefit of certain people. That's really important. To the benefit of all would mean that there should be representation for all. And there's a bunch of different type of people, right? Not everyone is the same. And so this is why, man, why not have a leader who's like disabled, right? Why not have a leader who's a girl? Why not have a leader who's this? And it'll be because people think that's pandering. Oh, we don't think a strong leader can be like disabled or have an ailment or things of that nature. But like, you think, bro, the X-Men is the shit, because Professor Xavier is a bald paraplegic who is the leader of the X-Men, and he's not the leader, right? You have like Scott Summers, you have Cyclops, and you have Storm, and then you have even Wolverine, and whoever else might take the mantle, right? Emma Frost, whoever it might be. But like, bro, the X-Men is the shit because they understood diversity and representation, and maybe not explicitly through character design, but through character traits. So it's really hard to explain that to dumb niggas who don't want to think that deeply about a fucking cartoon or a comic that was drawn in like, what the fuck, in the 80s, the 90s, whenever the fuck that came out. I mean, it was popular in the 90s. Probably came out before. right? Explaining that to someone is just like, bro, why are you looking at cartoons so deep? But it's a perfect example of how we can use art to understand reality. And it just hits with me. I fuck with the X-Men. But like, with other people, what else could I use, right? Like, we could say a head coach of a football team could potentially be anything as long as they're a good coach. That's what really a meritocracy should be. But we don't really live in a meritocracy. We live in, like, we look at image and we say, okay, this is that. Things should look this way. That makes sense to me. This person makes sense to me, right? You see a person and you see Geek Squad and you're like, okay, that makes sense if you see their certain like appearance. You look at a person who's like a shrewd businessman, and then certain things you get an image of your head of what that should be. But where does that image come from, and why isn't it universally applicable to all? And it's because of years of conditioning, right? It's because of years and I would say centuries, really, of conditioning. Not just on you, but like in the culture of what things should be and look like to you, to where everything and everyone around you is just adhering to these things, but they don't ever ask why. And they don't ask why because asking why might make it harder for you to be a certain way. So going against that is extremely difficult. But even if you do go against it, it does not mean that you won't fall into the same pit holes. You'll still make certain judgments on other people and say, oh, they look like this, so they are like this, or they act like this, so they are like this. And that might sometimes be a fair, safe, quick, snap judgment that is saving your life or saves you the time of interacting with someone or not. And in some cases, man, you could just be right. It's the hard truth. You could just be right. You could see a nigga disheveled, clothes have tattered clothes, holes with them. You know what I'm saying? Shoes all fucked up, no haircut, long flowing. You know what I mean? Like disheveled hair and his physical features, and then be like, okay, that person is like homeless, or you know what I mean, or they're on drugs or something like that. Or they just could be a rich nigga who's doing that specifically because they know that people will think that about them. And oftentimes, more than not, the people who would do that, who are wearing the, like, you know, disheveled, ripped up, tattered clothes, will be representative of what you think it is, because society will make you operate in certain ways to move in distinguishable ways, right? Like you would, someone in the military of any sort has to stay fit most of the time. I mean, they might get fat when they leave, or like on retirement, whatever it might be. But generally speaking, you're gonna be fit, right? So if you see a fit person and you see them in uniform, they might be in that, but they could just be wearing a fucking costume. That's why costumes and Halloween exist, and why I think that could be a dangerous holiday for those who believe spiritually, because then they're not easily able to identify what and how people are based on the garbs they are wearing and based on the way that they carry themselves. And in fact, if you believe to yourself that people who are carrying themselves with certain garbs and certain characteristics are not deserving of that, then that's when you think they're arrogant. That's when you think they're this, that, and the third, right? You don't think that they are what or who they actually are. And until they prove it to you, you will not believe it. Or unless you're open-minded enough, you might actually fucking think that shit. And actually realize, oh man, maybe I was just wrong, and I had all these preconceived notions about who and what people are, but they ain't actually that. I'm just thinking that they are. And then maybe let me give a chance to them to not, like, just simply put, not judge a book by its cover, right? And that's really about appearance, but I think it goes deeper than that. It's more than just about appearance. It's also about certain traits or something, right? Someone might be loud not because they have an emotional complex, but because they were never heard. And when they speak softly, people don't actually pay attention and hear them. So they learned how to get a need met, and that is attention. And that attention, they learned how to grab it by being loud. No one heard me when I was speaking soft, so now let me scream at the top of the lungs. You're going to notice me. And if not, that may have cost them their survival if they didn't learn to do that. But that doesn't mean that that's what they are or should be. It just means it's what they became. And if they became that, there's a lot of why. There's a lot of why that. And if they became that, that doesn't mean that they must remain that. Even more so. We're not, most of this shit, all this shit temporary. So, you know what I mean? You ain't got to be or stay anything or anyone unless you want to or you're forced to. and forced to indirectly or directly, right? Because that's what a lot of it is. It's indirect coercion. You know what I'm saying? And then we basically say it's your choice or your free will, right? We indirectly coerce you into doing a thing, and then be like, "Well, they could have said no. I would have accepted if they said no." You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have. You would have silently punished them in ways, and it's okay because that's just what it is, right? Negative or positive reinforcement, and that's just what it is. But it isn't okay to not acknowledge that that's what it is. And that's, I think, where I'm understanding where some people come from and why they think I'm a certain way. But it's really not, bro. Like, it's really, if you really got to know me, I am just genuinely trying to accommodate for all people as long as they don't try to hoe me. If you try to hoe me, then I'm going to stop trying to accommodate for you, because the accommodations will lead to my own destruction. And most of the time, most of the reasons why we're accommodating isn't for our own destruction. It's to help others, right? It's to build with others and build within ourselves. Either some tolerance to withstand amount of uncomfortability, right? A tolerance to, or an ability to learn compromise, right? And to learn how to be a team player or anything else of the sort. But I really don't think that that matters if I say that about myself. Not because I don't care about what I think about myself, but because how many people may not think or know that about me isn't up to what I believe about myself. It's up to what I would have to prove to them. But if you know yourself well enough, you don't give a fuck and you're not trying to prove shit. So people just see that shit on you and they have to feel it. But if they don't know themselves well enough, they won't ever see that. All they'll see is what they view as, they'll see their projections onto you. And their projections onto you are the things that they can't be or cannot be. Kanye West has a song, Everything I Am. Everything I'm not made me everything I am. I don't think Kanye West is the type of nigga. I don't know this nigga, but I used to listen to him, and this is probably a bad segue because niggas is like, oh, at some point, I feel like every decade, not every decade, every couple years, Kanye says some wild shit. We all hate him, and then he says, and then it's kind of like it's instantiated by, you know, the world around us, and then we're like, man, he had a good point. You know what I mean? And sometimes that nigga don't. He just be off kilter, and like that's being a human. You can't get everything right. I'd be more surprised if he did. But I feel like he's a good example of someone who, with that song on Graduation, is like telling us, nigga, I'm not a nigga who's like a toxic masculine fucking drug dealing b-boy. Really, I like gospel music and soul music, and I want to sing and make beats, but like I have to rap and make beats because and I have to dress a certain way and present a certain way. I have to be arrogant. I have to be so confident and so like unrelenting with myself so that others will believe that. And then when you prove it to them, they accept you in open arms. But the thing is, you cannot stay that because it can change at a moment. You wouldn't even want that. Hence why in a different video or a different port of me talking, I've said that like Drake's probably in that position where he's done a lot, and I won't say everything, but done so much to get public approval. And any sort of artist or person who wants attention or needs the attention in order to, you know, make a living for themselves, or and we all sort of do, right, to some degree. But like, you know, even at a larger scale like that, as far as like being an entertainer, if you're willing to do whatever it takes or anything to get to a certain point, you have to be very careful that when you remain yourself or reveal yourself beyond the mask of who you are, that what they see is something that they actually like. And you can even think that, well, I've made these many people. I know a few people will leave. I know a few people will expose themselves and not want to be around. But at least I was myself at the end. But the journey along the way of maybe putting these masks on, man, you don't even know how much that's going to cost, bro. So is it worth it? To each their own, but like most of the time I don't think so. I think it's really not. It's just something that we decide is necessary. And so if it's by any means, then any means is necessary, right? It's just the shit. The ends justify the means. It don't matter how I did it, just that I did. Now I can finally be me. Now I can finally be that beautiful butterfly when I was at first a caterpillar and then I was cocoon. Like, and even Dave Chappelle said something where he was like, sometimes you gotta be. He said his mom told him this like proverb or whatever, where it's like sometimes you gotta be a wolf so that you can be the sheep you actually are. And like these things, and there's a bunch of Bible verses that I'm sure go into that. But like just to speak on entertainers, because I think it's more so in regards to being around people and not within the spiritual. Because within the spiritual, it's very clear cut. You know what I mean? You're yourself, right? You're with this or you're with that. So there isn't a compromise. There isn't a like maybe I can tiptoe. It's like a nah, nigga. You not you is or you not, right? So I think within humanity, because we are, if you want to go to like popular Christian religion, right, or I just Abrahamic religions, I think in general, may not be all, but we are like sinners. Essentially, human nature is not negative, but we are known and able to make flaws. That is something that is inherent and regular to us. We're going to make flaws. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes. So we have to try to make, we have to make that okay for ourselves. But in the ways that we make that okay aren't always okay. Because some of it is just cognitive dissonance. It's just, that's not how it happened. But sometimes it's like, nigga, that's exactly how it happened. Well, that's not how I feel about it. But, nigga, your feelings aren't always an accurate representation of what it actually is. But that shit don't help me sleep at night, so fuck it. It's just like, well, bro, that like, what the fuck are we even talking about? It's a lot of people would do this shit where just as long as it helps them sleep at night and feel good within themselves, that's all that matters. And it's a way just seeking pleasure, and the pleasure is in the attention that you get from others. Finally believing what you said about yourself the entire time. But you never needed that. You just really, really wanted it. Because it tastes so good. Wow, you taste so good. This is why I fuck with Naruto, but why I hate Naruto at the same time. Fuck with Naruto, but I hate Naruto at the same time. Kishimoto probably, it's a self-insert for sure, because, a lot of art is, but Kishimoto probably just felt like, man, I'm the best manga artist of all time, and I'm going to prove it to you. And that drove him to create Naruto, which is a phenomenal manga and anime, right? But he's not. You know what I'm saying? We could say that Toriyama is. We could say that what's in it? Ten, the nigga who did Astro Boy. I don't remember his name. I gotta look him up. What the hell is his name? That's gonna bug me. I really have to look that up now. Astro Boy. This is a terrible segue. Tanuka, right? Tezuka. Okay, whatever. Fuck Tezuka. I was close. You're not Tezuka, nigga. You're not Ichiro Oda. You know what I mean? Like, and again, what is the best, my nigga? You not the best for real. You could be the best. Like, nigga, if Naruto's my favorite anime or manga, is the best, and it was at one point, very much so. But it's it's only because of, I think, a lot of nostalgia, and because I think that what it means to want to do that can be from a noble perspective, but ultimately it is very, very selfish. We see parallels in that in itself through Gaara, and again, this is me talking about fucking cartoons again, but whoop-dee-doo, right? Whether it's cartoons, whether it's music, whether it's fucking political, anything that it is for real, these principles usually align with some of the things because they're based off of the laws or principles of reality. And that's subjective. So that makes it hard to actually pinpoint, but it's fairly clear when you think about it. What it is realistically is this. My nigga, people are going to think shit about you that doesn't always align with who and what you are. You know in yourself that that's not who or what you are. But sometimes you must address these things. Sometimes it's better to not address these things. Most of the time, The only thing that matters is knowing the difference. And when you can't, so like accept the things you cannot change, change the things you cannot accept. But they're in the wisdom to know the difference. But all it really means is that because we're all different and seeing from different perspectives, there is not going to be a uniform, right? There's not going to be uniformity within the perspective of people. But seeking cohesion is a worthwhile endeavor. So it's something we must do, in spite of its, in spite of how infutable it is. Infutability is some shit that's not possible. And I mean, there's a word that usually is more concise to say the things that I'm trying to say, so I don't have to say it for as long as I'm saying it. But man, sometimes you really got to break things down for it to make sense, especially if the one word or the couple of phrases and cliches are used in ways that, like they just lose their meaning with how often they're used and how sparingly people actually investigate what it actually came from or meant or means, right? Or people can just say, "Oh, it means this to me," and then how valid is that, right? Because if I'm saying that that's what it is in the first place, oh, my perspective is this, your perspective is that. We can take a phrase of saying the glass is half full versus the glass is half empty, is like mindset type shit, right? And it just be like, my nigga, it's just half. You know what I'm saying? Like someone could just say that, and it's just equally as valid. Half what, nigga? It's just half. Whatever way you look at it, it's half though, right? So then it's like, what do you choose to focus on? But then that doesn't mean you don't acknowledge the negative. It doesn't mean you wouldn't want a full cup of water. It doesn't mean that you're not, okay with having at least a half because at least it's not empty, right? Trying to investigate that is hard because then it's like, okay, well then shit. But maybe that brings people peace, right? Maybe it brings people peace to think of it that way, because as long as it sounds good, then they come to a conclusion themselves by that. They're like, you know what? You're sure right. I'm going to look at it like it's half full instead of half empty. But some niggas are like, yeah, that shit half. It's half a cup. And then where do we go from there? Just half what? Nigga, half. Right? And then it's just that. Now it's pick a side. Nigga, it's half. It's not a full cup. Okay, so you're saying it's half empty? Nigga, nah, I'm just saying it's not a full cup. We see the full cup and it's not there. That's just what it is. So you're being negative right now. Nigga, I'm being just real. As real as I can. As real as I can. As real as I can be. Well, you just need to work on your mindset. Listen, if some mindset mindset and willpower is a very strong thing, and it can get you it can get you so many places that, so many places that just seem impossible. But it's not the end all be all. We gotta realize that there's a lot of societal factors at play, and there's a lot of cultural things, and there's a lot of historical things, right? Because I think if a woman willed it hard enough, then we would already have a woman president. But I don't think it's just because a woman hasn't willed it hard enough. You know what I'm saying? Like we had Hillary try, we had Kamala try in recent years. I don't think that's because they didn't have enough will necessarily to do so. I don't think they had any more will or less will than any other the candidates. They all had the same amount of will. Now it was just what they were willing to do or not do in order to ensure achieving that goal, that any means possible type shit, right? That by any means necessary, or the ends justify the means type shit, which is fine to some degree. But it's a very difficult concept to reconcile with when you see the damage that it can cause. And it can cause a lot of damage. It can cause a ton of damage. But most people won't care because, nigga, I'm not going to look at what's behind me. Look at this new road I just paved. But if you had to pave a road by using all of the road behind you, right, if it was paved with bricks and you took all of the bricks and you, let's say a wall, if you built a wall in front of you that was paved with all of the bricks behind you, nigga, there's no wall behind you no more. There's the wall in front of you, and you could just stare at the wall and be like, yeah, I ain't never looking back. But that doesn't mean it's secure on every side. Now, if you decide my perspective is my reality, therefore I'm not going to circle around to look around and see that I'm not in a house or, anything like that. I'm just staring at a brick wall that's in front of me that I built through hard sheer will and effort. And that's all you're going to see. And then that's the cognitive dissonance. That's the dissociative identity type shit, bro. And that's the thing that will and potentially can get you to achieve high highs, great heights, man. But it's the same exact thing that could destroy everything around it and everyone around it. So be very, very careful, man. Be very, very careful. To myself and to anyone who might resonate, man, because I think we oversimplify things. Now, to kind of be more grounded, because I'm a little bit all over the place within myself, I run into the issue of knowing that I exist in a place where people are going to think certain things about me based on certain ways that I think, move, and act, but they may not actually be who I am. So I run into the problem of having to, not having to, but being considerate of that, while also knowing that I can only be so much. And that's hard because it makes with certain things that I go through, just, look at me, like it makes certain things seem like they're either overcompensations or like they're, just like I was saying before, like this cognitive dissonance, like this glaring blind spot that he doesn't see within himself. Like everyone else sees this about him. I can't believe he doesn't see this about himself. But just because everyone sees that doesn't mean it's true. I think going back to Naruto, because I fuck with Naruto, Neji Hyuga is on the branch family of the Hyuga family, right? Hinata Hyuga is on the main branch. She is royalty. This nigga a soldier. He is more fit as far as physicality and as far as skill. And if we're talking straight merit, that nigga has way more merit to be the main branch like leader than Hinata does. He's more skilled than her, right? He's smarter than her. But he has a glaring blind spot. He has something that she doesn't have. She has compassion, empathy, sympathy towards people. That's why she sees Naruto and they become, because she saw him. You know what Naruto saw? He called that nigga a genius. And Neji was like, damn, he called me a genius for real. Neji needed something. He needed that proof. He needed someone to prove in him. You know what Hinata saw in Naruto? Not just his potential. She saw him. Because that nigga was never not Hokage for real, if we're going to be real. He was always Hokage. He just wasn't the leader of the village yet. There's a difference, my nigga. He was always Hokage. Because that nigga always, no matter who you were, bro, that nigga treated you the fucking same. He just kind of gave you the energy back that you was like, oh, he's a loudmouth knucklehead. You treated him like shit. He was going to treat you like shit. You gave him some love, some compassion. He was going to give you that shit back. So he was always a Hokage. That's what the Hokage do. Someone hostile in the village, you gotta, you know what I mean? Like a rogue ninja, right? Like someone like Orochimaru. We seen that nigga Sarutobi, Lord Third, put up on him because he was like, nigga, you giving me the energy like you trying to destroy my homies in my home. Welcome Jiraiya and them niggas with open arms, right? Like it's just like, come on, bro. Like we see what it is. We know what it is, right? Using Naruto as a frame of reference. Again, I like Japanese cartoons and just cartoons themselves. So, but I like it because it's art, and because in art, if you're looking for it, you can find so many things within reality. Now, art is very moving, and what talking about the object or the thing in the middle, right, and the perspective people are shading it is exactly what every piece of art goes through. All art is subject to misinterpretation. So in itself, that raises a problem. Someone could think the point of Naruto is that. Someone can think the point of Neji, right? But going back to Neji and Hinata, because I kind of want to expound upon that. Someone can think, oh man, Neji's not in the main branch. He seems like he should be, right? And someone could see Hinata and be like, man, she kind of a fuck up, bro. Like she ain't really hard like that. She's kind of part of a sensor unit. Neji's part of like an attack squad, right? Like all his niggas is like hitters. Rock Lee, hitter. Might Guy, one of the toughest hitters and all that. Him, hitter. 10-10, her abilities align towards hitter, but like we just saw her get cooked by Tamara because she was part of some tougher hitters in the Sand Village, and like those were like the only representation of the Sand Village hitters, so like they had to be hit. Right? They had to be hit, just narratively speaking, right? But then that's narratively speaking. Right? Even going that far is me accommodating for knowing that if Tamara didn't seem hard, then we wouldn't think that the Sand Village was hard, right? We wouldn't think that some of these niggas, we wouldn't think Gaara and his siblings are hard. We would just think Gaara is hard. The whole point was to say, man, all three of these niggas is hard. But again, that's just to talk specifically about that specific cartoon and that narrative, because I think it paints a picture. And if you haven't seen Naruto, then it may not land, and I would have to explain the entirety of Naruto, but even that takes so much more time that the context of it doesn't make sense. There is no unified thing that I can be like, all right, everyone has seen or read this, and I'm glad that there isn't, because when there is, it's usually like religion, and even that's subject to misinterpretation. But if that's a lot more serious if it is misunderstood or scrutinized by others. Because if I can talk about Naruto, some nerds might just get mad at me and send me, like, you know, at worst, maybe death threats to the internet. They might dox me. They might do some shit like that. But, like, most of the time, they're not going to start a crusade or some shit or, like, send missionaries to convert me and people who think like me. You know what I mean? So, I'm try to be very careful around tiptoeing around religion, because it's just such a touchy subject, but it is a subject that you need to talk about. It's just how passionate people get behind it makes it difficult. And some people cannot separate a passionate conversation through actions outside of that conversation. That's terrifying. And some people realize that having these passionate conversations and using like fallacies and bad rhetoric and just arguing in bad faith can persuade and invigorate others to move in a certain way. And so therefore they realize that the conversation is deeper and bigger than a conversation. Therefore it needs to be had in good faith. Otherwise it is not an actual conversation. It is just a sales pitch with extra steps. But man, my nigga, like, if we just can learn how to do this, and truly, I mean truly, not be so firm in our belief because of how it looks to be firm in your beliefs, because that's another thing to prove. If you're someone who's like, well, I learned this, and then something new happens, and they're like, oh, well, I learned something new, and then it conflicts with that, and you learn something new, people are going to be, oh, they're wishy-washy, oh, they don't know where they stand on certain things. Nigga, I do know where I stand. You can stand where the facts lies, right? You can stand where the information proves. You know what I mean? Like, you can stand with truth, objective truth, and that is shifting because we don't know the objective truth. So, like, nigga, if someone's like, I'm a gravity denier, and then gravity gets proven, like, what do they, you know what I mean? You're not gonna be like, no, still deny gravity. That's not hard. I'm not gonna be like, that nigga tough. He denied gravity. He didn't give a fuck what nobody proved. Nigga, fuck the math. Fuck the physics. We're not gonna be like, that nigga hard. You know what I'm saying? So, like, it gets to a point where we just really got to think about it. It's like, nah, my nigga, that's not what it's about. It's about, like, okay, cool. Man, I don't think it's gravity. I think God is, like, or, you know what I mean? The earth is tethering up. There's these, they might have thought some crazy shit. There's these little strings that make it so you don't see, but you're anchored down. Or they thought it was magnetism or some shit, right? And I think gravity is some of that. But, like, I'm not a scientist, so whatever. But, like, they may have thought it was just a specific magnet. They had magnet. Like, I mean, we do. Anyways, they might have thought some shit that wasn't actually what it is. They couldn't describe it. They couldn't explain it, right? They couldn't, quote, unquote, prove it. Air quotes. Prove it. Air quotes if you're not watching and you seeing. Or you're not watching but you hearing. But, like, my nigga, it's just like, bro, it's like, it's so. I'm tired, gang. I'm so tired because sometimes what I feel like I'm saying is rudimentary, and I think a lot would agree. And then they go out and they apply it, and it's just the same shit. It's just, this doesn't serve me. Okay, I'm not gonna lose sleep about this. Like, there's only so much you can do in your control. Like, bro, if we can control our perception and our perception is our reality, we can literally control reality around us. You cannot tell me that nothing is out of my control if that logic is what we're following. And at that same point, I am not going to spend my life trying to be a control freak and make everyone think the same exact way that I think because I think that I'm right. That's not a life well living or worth living, I would say. It's not a life well spent. I'm not going to just argue and yell on the internet, which is why most of the time I shut the fuck up. I be quiet. I don't like to have these conversations, not because I don't like them, but because most people don't, and most people walk away from it, not actually coming away from where I can't say most people. Some people come away from it not actually feeling me, my nigga, but feeling some shit that they already thought and having that reinforced, or maybe having that question it, but not even wanting to go far enough to think why. They're just like, man, I don't like that shit made me feel or think that. Something off about that guy. You know what I'm saying? They come away walking with thinking you're the one who's tripping. Them niggas don't think like me. And then now we're just two perspectives, which is two realities, just battling each other. And what does that serve? Unless it's serving to actually look at what truth could actually be, what reality could actually be, and not just what it could actually be, but what it could be best for all of us, right? Most things and most people, if you want to be a good leader, a good president, whatever you want to call it, my nigga, right? It's for the greater good. It's for the good of the greatest, the good of all, ideally. So we say greater good because, man, it's not good of all, but it could be greater for, you know what I mean? It could be for the greater good. But ideally, it's the good of all and the good for all. That's why if you want to talk about just United States, because God bless America, it's liberty and justice for all. That's what's written. That's what's written. Because that shit sound nice as fuck. Liberty and justice behind for all is something everybody could get behind. Nigga, liberty for me? Hell yeah. Liberty for you? Hell yeah. Justice for you? Hell yeah. Justice for me? Hell yeah. Justice for them? Hell yeah. Liberty for them? Hell yeah. But in practice? Hell nah. It's a good sales pitch. But in practice, we can say, okay, we've tried to do it for all, but you know, you don't have the, not when everyone isn't on board, it's important. No, my nigga. I think, I like anime and manga, bro. And I haven't seen a lot, but the ones I have seen, I've really gotten down in because there's something to be seen there that may not be written in its text explicitly. There's subtext, right? Same way, liberty and justice for all, it was written, and it wasn't written by all types of niggas. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was written by a specific demographic, and that specific demographic benefit off of that. But let's talk about Vinland Saga for a second. Vinland Saga in the manga just ended, and I'm all over the place, but again, lock it with me. Vinland Saga, the manga ended, and it's a manga about a young boy who loses his father due to violence in a mistake of his own, and he spends his adolescence years chasing and pursuing violence, spends some of his 20s basically as a slave, desolate, because he's basically disillusioned with what his life was when he was an adolescent, because that's what he spent his entire life trying to do. And then as he gets in his later 20s and all that, listens to what his father was actually telling him when he was, unfortunately taken away from him, and realized that he must try to create a place of peace. Essentially, Vinland is what would be, so it's from Vikings. So Vikings were, if you know anything historically about Vikings, they were typically a violent, plundering kind of group of people, culture. That wasn't all they were, right? And through Thorfinn Karselfany, it might be a real person. Um, I think, but everything probably didn't go down exactly how it was because it's a manga. It's like a dramatization of any historical events. Something's just got to sound cooler, or even if it's like a 1-to-1 off of a book of like his biography, something in the book was probably embellished. Again, so it has to be a good selfish. So my nigga, like, think about it like this then. He wanted to create a pacifist society coming from a culture of violence. In order to do so, they had to chart to new territories and new lands. When they found the new lands, they weren't uninhabited. So, because there was a language barrier and because there was just misunderstandings through, either body language or through, like preconceived notions, they essentially, inevitably, I should say, they ran into a conflict. And unfortunately, because I don't think it's in the inevitability, but unfortunately, that conflict led to violence. So, within that, he abandoned Vinland because once they started to get, and this sounds crazy, once it started to, or once it fell into violence, it was no longer the thing that he was trying to create or looking for. It was no longer that. It was something else entirely. So now that it's something else entirely, what else to do but walk away from it? It's a painful and extremely difficult thing to do, and it cost him his best friend, the one who he set out to actually put the groundwork in to make this land with. It cost them their life because they fell into it, because they wouldn't leave. They had so much pride, they had so much ego, they had so much, anger towards those who, in their eyes, they could villainize and make seem like you're the ones who destroyed Vinland. But we did it. We destroyed it. We did it by resorting to violence. And it's like one of those things where, like, because of the perspective thing, it's almost like it is an inevitability. But just like the perspective things, if we're talking about the art circle, we could all sit in the same fucking chair and take turns. We could all sit in the single file line and take turns. But you know what? That takes a lot. And that would mean there was only one person. And that's not where we're at with things. So it's just like, my nigga, like, it's possible though. And again, the true religion is believing everything is possible, good or bad. But you hope for the good. You pray for the good. And the reason you do is because wouldn't that be greater for all? Isn't that what greater good is? Wouldn't that be best for everybody? Not just somebody's? I want it to be good for the nobodies, the somebodies, the anybodies, my nigga. It has to be all of that, though. Nothing can be left out. But, like, my nigga, like, there's really only so much that I could say. There's really only so much that I could believe in and actually say that I hope actually lands on the ears of others. And worst of all, which is just so human, but worst of all, we're extremely forgetful. And we remember things and use things that we remember as they serve us to get through times and environments that we're in. So, I mean, unfortunately, it might just be that nobody's gonna care or give a fuck about the shit I'm saying, because how does this help me get a bag, my nigga? Like, I seen this thing. It was a meme. It was like this girl was like her man or some shit was talking about like, see, then the Earth is flat because, and she's like, why does it? Why do I give a fuck about the shape of the Earth? I still gotta live on this motherfucker and pay bills. That's extremely pragmatic. The shape of the Earth doesn't matter if you still gotta live on it and then still live and do these things, but it does in terms of what that means. The reality of what you actually have to do is, because then it's like, okay, well, I mean, maybe it's not flat, or maybe it's round, or maybe it is flat, I mean, and it's not a sphere. But then how does that change the way we travel? The way that travel is fair, and if you like to, or airfare is, priced. And then if you like to travel, then that does kind of directly affect you, right? How does that change the way that you pay for the? And it doesn't have to be like something that simple, that like, I guess, out of pocket, but it is a good example because it's a little absurd and kind of funny. But like, man, it's just like, if we really get down to it deep down, bro, like shit like that, as far as the example of like the Earth, doesn't really matter. But it does matter because it was a good question to ask. Someone who's like, man, this motherfucker circle or this motherfucker flat. People who thought it was flat first, and then the motherfucker was like, nah, this shit is a sphere. You know what I'm saying? That like they had to have that question, and I'm sure at some point they sounded crazy until they could prove it to other people, right? But if they believed in their heart of hearts and then had the willpower, and also were standing on the shoulders of giants. Let me just say that again: standing on the shoulders of giants, because someone before you, some people before you, had to lay the groundwork and framework of this type of thought or study of thought or school of thought or whatever the fuck you want to call it, in order for it to be built upon. And if we lose that, right, that's what, like, all becoming the same isn't good, because then we lose the ability to make differences that actually push us to learning more about what it could be or what it actually is. And if what it could be is better than what it is now, and I mean better not subjectively, because I mean better for all, so then it would just be objective better, which is, well, you can't make it better for everything, but I'm sure if everyone had food in their bellies, nobody would be like, okay, this is worse for me, right? That's the thing we all need to do. If everyone could sleep enough and, you know what I mean, get the required amount of sleep for human efficiency, that would be good for all. If everyone could have shelter and things like that, that would be good for all. There's certain things that we could say like, man, but it would be, and we could just say capitalistically, right? They might not lie in certain pockets, certain way, right? We could just say maybe it would be, oh, well, it'd be overpopulated. No, my nigga, like we could say that, but like my nigga, there was times where overpopulation wasn't a problem because them niggas wasn't keep track of that shit. It either wasn't a problem or it was a problem, but we wasn't keep track of that shit. And so niggas who was around the earth could either eat or they couldn't. But everyone who was eating was eating. And so if everyone who was eating, let's just make that everyone and not the people who couldn't, right? Because what I mean is just a matter of now we have a better way of tracking and seeing who might not be able to. So let's make sure that them niggas specifically can. And if they can, then let's do something about it. And if we can't do something about it immediately, let's talk about it. Because the conversation will go a long way. It might open up new neural pathways, right? It might open up new literal pathways that allow people to see an option or solution in avenues that they didn't think were possible before. It's I really wanna save the world, my nigga. Like, save it from itself. But I can't save me from me, and I can't save you from you. I can't save you from others necessarily. And so I accept that. But I won't save my breath and not have the conversation because, like, fuck, bro. As much as it brings me ease in my life, because I don't have to talk to people and I don't have to risk being misunderstood or risk preconceived notions, being thrown about on myself, or risk all of this kind of shit that makes it impossible or very difficult to do in the first place. It's just like, man, if I didn't, none of the shit that I did outside of it would ever be worth it. I know that it would never be worth it. I have to try to help. I mean, like, really help, man. Like, really fucking help, bro. And I get emotional about it. I get mad emotional about it because it's like, my nigga, like, nobody cares like that, bro. Nobody for real cares like that, but it's not even because they don't have the capacity. Most of the time, it's not that they don't have the capacity, it's just that they feel like they don't have the time or the energy or both. Or if they do have the time and energy or both, it is better spent on themselves, because you can only focus on yourselves and care about yourself. Or first and foremost, you can't save or help anybody until you save and help yourself. Well, how long does that take? When am I saved? When am I saved? My nigga, am I saved when I have made this much money? I got this much bills. You know what I mean? I got this much saved. I have these, you know what I mean? This family. I got this car. I got this house. Like, when am I saved? When have I saved myself? I can travel this many times a year. And not that I just can, I have the capability to, but I also have done it for this many years. When am I truly saved, my nigga? When am I, oh, you can't help anyone till you help yourself. Okay, when am I done helping myself? When am I like, oh, I don't need as much help anymore? Like, that's still one of those decisions that is just arbitrary, nigga. It doesn't matter when. It doesn't matter where, nigga. Homeless people can collect and live together and work in little, like, huts and, you know what I mean, tents, and, you know, have more together. And that doesn't mean, oh, they're not helping. They need to focus on themselves. My nigga, if they were, they'd probably be struggling even harder. They would have to do that. Like, people on the streets, my nigga, people who are in places, refugees and all that shit, they have to come together, right? Disparaged and disenfranchised communities come together because they all need the help. It's not like, oh, you need to focus on yourself so that you can help the community around, because no one would help each other then. They would all be so focused on helping themselves not be where they are now. By the time they got out of it, the people who needed the help would be dead. But it's like, if I say that, and people do it and it doesn't happen at work, that's evidence against it. If I say it and it happens and people don't care about it, then it doesn't matter. If I say it and it doesn't happen, again, then it's like, what was the point? Where's the proof? We need proof. I need the evidence that it's there, that this is true. Tell me. I haven't seen anything. Well, there's a thing called survivor bias as well. And then if it's history and the history is written by the victors, then the people who win, because historically they moved in a certain way, are just gonna make it seem and be that way forever. But if everyone is, if the winners wrote history, and everyone tries to be the winner, then who the fuck is gonna lose? How the fuck would anyone do? How could everyone do that? And if you want to be like, oh, some niggas just gonna lose, okay, well then how is that an accurate representation of what it is objectively, or not even objectively, but what is going to be for the best of all? Because it's not. It's just for the best of niggas who can win or who have historically won, and those who can imitate that well enough to get even like marginally close to what that actually is. Like, my nigga, my nigga, my nigga, my nigga, my nigga, my nigga. Why does this matter? Why not just vibe twin? Just have fun. Just do things that help you sleep at night. Be better. Make money. Stack commas. Get zeros. Make number go up. And I mean, whether that's weight, experience, you feel me? Like, in terms of like weight, like you can move, because like there's like obesity. You don't want to be there. But you know what I mean? Like, why not get good number? Well, I just want good number. I want good number experience. I want good number of kids. I want good number of house. I want good number of wife. I want good number of you know what I mean? You just look for the good numbers, right? But doesn't that just take the quality of life and just quantify it to what numbers sound right in our head? And doesn't that mean, because numbers, again, are infinite? I didn't say that again, but again, you know what I mean? But like, since numbers are infinite, what is the good number to stop at? When is enough enough? So, look, man, talk about this. for my entire life. I could stay up the entire night and yap about this, and then and continue to talk about this shit. But ultimately, I don't think that would make the change, because it wouldn't be someone getting up and doing something, and that has to happen. But that has to happen with good thought, with a good mentality and a good thought process. Because otherwise, what will happen is something that's different, and what the difference is may not be a positive difference. You know what I mean? We can make a positive difference, but we really have to be careful in the ways that we do it, because most of the time the ways that we say do it is just make good number, be good number, have good number. And then we say quality, right? We try to qualify it, but really it's just how much number do you need for this quality, right? How many number of meals do you have a day, right? That's quality. How hours of sleep do you have a day? That's quality, right? How many hours of social time do you have a day? That's quality. We can quantify it through numbers regardless. So it's still just quantity, but then it's just good number. Quality is just number good. Quantity is just how much. And most time, big number, good number. So what the fuck are we talking about other than just make number go burr? That's not the way though, bro. That's not the way. It is a way. Well, then that just turns us all into numbers. So what are the bad numbers? What? The low numbers, the low vibrational, the low, right? But that's not true, because the low vibrational stuff makes my number go big. Because it's entertaining. And after making all of these numbers and stressed out about making number go burr, or big number stay big number, or big number get bigger, you're like, damn, I just want to disconnect. I don't want to be so focused on where and what number go or do. I just want bad number funny. That's why we make fun of shit. That's why it's the preconceived notions of people being like this, or like, right? That's why there's like, you know, a bunch of like racist jokes. There's a bunch of misogynist humor, right? There's a bunch of like joke, like I'm bald, so like there's a bunch of like bald jokes out too, cause ha ha ha, bald funny. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of shit that's just like ha ha ha. You know what I mean? Like we just laugh, and it's not even to say that shit shouldn't ever be laughed at, cause sometimes that shit just funny, bro. Right? We even talk about height, short number. We talk about weight, ha ha ha, big number, fat number. Right? Like it's just that, bro. Like we just and then we attribute things like, oh, they have a Napoleon complex. Napoleon was pretty objectively a good war general until he wasn't. We don't say a George Washington complex, right? We don't say he had a Hitler complex, right? Them niggas was still good. We don't say he has a Mussolini complex, like, right? Even if they're taller, man, we don't say these certain things. We only say that nigga because he was short and because the French lost, and the French had a lot of revolutions and they were bloody. Right? French lost a lot. But Napoleon was pretty damn good for the French, my nigga. That nigga was a superstar, bruh. So we just attribute certain things to these things historically without it asking ourselves why. And we do that because simplifying it makes it ha 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 funny number. Like, what are we talking about, my nigga? Like, and again, for my struggles, nigga, I'm short, I'm bald, I'm black. Nigga, historically, this shit has not been Gucci for niggas who've been like me. You feel me? Just historically speaking, bro. Historically speaking, bro. We had not been having it the best, right? We niggas been treated like shit. But that doesn't mean that I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna resign myself to the fate of that. And that doesn't mean that people who put that perspective onto me are correct. And that doesn't mean even me saying this means that I somewhat agree with it. It's just acknowledging that that's what it could be and that's what people might think. And even if it's not that, okay, then how confident and how secure within myself am I to just be without trying to, prove? But at some point, man, it's hard to make belief without proof. That takes faith. And man, there's a lot of people who use that faith, and it's bad faith. So you have to scrutinize it. You have to be very critical of it. And you can't just have blind faith, because that's akin to stupidity. Even if it's not. Even if it's just even if it's just like a gamble, because like most things are just a gamble, right? Taking anyone who plays the lottery and looks at the odds, like they should just not. I mean, with it, blah, 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 not historically. I've said that a lot. It's probably why it's in my word cup. But like, you know, if you just look at like the empirical evidence, right? Look at the data, statistics. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for. If you look at the statistics of it, my nigga, that shit that shit's not in your favor, my nigga. So playing that shit is dumb as fuck. But it's the faith of man. If I hit that lottery, nigga, I'll be up. You having faith that you could. So it's a gamble. Stocks, nigga, them niggas is just gambling. They're just making fair gambles, bro. They're like, nah, this gamble gonna hit, and they play with everybody money. But like, you hit your parlay. I might make a gamble, but you see certain things, oh, that's not gonna hit. You know what I mean? Why things have a higher probability and don't? Because you see statistics as far as what people are acting, or you see, the historical evidence of how they were, and you know what I mean, what they might continue to do, or they generally average this stuff, and then we just again look at life through numerics. But listen, if you have faith, you go hit this wild 400 leg parlay, and then that motherfucker hit, you might just be set, bro. I'm not saying you go hit it. I'm not saying it's go guaranteed. I'm not even saying it's a high probability. I'm just saying, my nigga. Yeah. As we get older, we take high percentage shots, right? We want shit to make. We want certain things to actually hit, because when we're younger, I think having the possibility of anything happening is pretty cool, right? Tooth fairy gonna visit me. Santa might come through. My parents might I might get, a day out of school out of random because my parents has to take me somewhere, and it's just like, that's cool, right? You never know. But as you get older, you need more certainty, and so as you need more certainty, it becomes difficult to see things that are improbable as worth taking a chance on. And so you don't. But then that's just the sunk cost fallacy in a lot of ways. But in a lot of ways, it is just to save yourself. And so balancing that out is my problem. I don't know how to or when to, because you got to believe, right? If I didn't believe in it, then a part of me would lose all of me. I would lose all of me for a part of me. The part of me that's like, nah, my nigga, be this way. When all of me is saying, nah, my nigga, I know that this is the thing that's possible. And I have to have faith and believe that it is. If I lose that faith, I lose everything. Everything. That's my faith, man. There's a lot more that goes into it, but for the sake of saving my own time, breath, and energy, just like I was saying before, I unfortunately have to shut up for a bit. I want to share more thoughts, but I don't know how or when they're gonna come out. And I think the more you live, the more naturally you go through these moments. And it's just hard to always capture these moments when they arrive, because they come like inspiration and less like motivation, right? And it's a thing that you can crank out, but when you crank it out, it becomes a lot less authentic. But I think the more I think hold on to it, which is crazy because I don't want to hold on to it, right? I'm not like trying to hold grudges or like hold on to these, like maybe these could be somewhat negative, right? Because if I'm saying I'm staying up too late or doing too much shit, thinking too hard about some things I cannot change and not knowing the difference, then that could be pretty bad for me. But it's like, nah, maybe it's good for me. Maybe it's bad for a lot of people, and that's the problem. But it's good for me because it grounds me. And that's a hard thing to if I was trying to sell that, that's a hard thing to sell. But I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just trying to tell it. That's the difference, right? I gain nothing from this. In fact, I lose much more than I would by saying any of this. So when you look at someone who's trying to tell you something, it's like, what do they gain from it? I don't want to preach to niggas either, man. Cause I'm not. I mean, who am I? Who am I to tell or preach or say anything to anyone about how they are, especially if I'm not where they want me to be or where they want to be. Why would they believe me? Right? Why not believe the winners, the guys who they want to be like? I'm not saying I'm a loser. I'm a pretty alright guy, but I've lost a lot. I've won a lot too. I won a lot of battles and things that like people don't see or acknowledge or even care about. But that doesn't mean it's not a win to me. So then what does it matter, right? How much of that matters? How much of that is an actual win for right for what the goal would be to educate and inform a bunch of people in ways in which thinking and perspectives, I should say, even better word, perspectives in which benefit all. Most people won't want to see that way, and most people will see it as something that's impossible. But again, the true religion is believing that everything is possible. Everything is possible, my nigga. This ain't no manifesto or no shit like that. Don't get it twisted, my nigga. It's just that's what it is, bro. We believe the good shit is possible, and you hold on to that and have faith on it, because otherwise, you don't try. And like, shit. Sometimes that's all we got, bro. That's all we could do. But yeah, man, again, I'm not better than anyone. I'm not worse than anyone. Shit, I'm not even anything to anyone. I'm just me. And hopefully the parts of me that I give and share are received accurately and are received well. But for the most part, accurately. Because if they're received accurately, I think they could just tell that it means well. And if not, then at least the accuracy means that afterwards they can feel that it means well, right? So I hope I help. That's all I really hope, man. Anyone, anything. But I hope that it helped make a positive difference for everybody and not just somebody. And so I wrestle with this. This rhetoric is very, very tricky to articulate, because how do people see this and not just immediately shut it off after saying, "Oh, just do things for yourself. You don't understand it. I understand this shit well," right? Like, some people could just really close that off there, and I can't even say they would be wrong for it. I just could say I don't know if it would be good for everybody, but if it's good for you, then some people might think that's just good enough. I don't want to give more counterpoints and arguments and feed the narrative on the other side, but you got to acknowledge that that's how a lot of people will think and how a lot of people move and behave already. But I don't think that means it has to be. I don't think that's how it has to be. But shit, it is what it is sometimes, and sometimes is right now. But my little silver lining, a light at the end of the tunnel, is that sometime isn't all of the time. So I hope it'll change sometime, and sometime soon. Peace.